Here's my important question for you. When it comes time for that next promotion, when it comes time for the succession plan to be written and you're not in the room, who is talking about you and what are they saying? This is the question that I have for you today. I'm going to ask you again. When it comes time for that next promotion to become the CEO of an organization and you are not in the room, my question for you is who in that room is talking about you and what are they saying? That is the question for the day, because that is the conversation that most senior leaders will never hear. What is said about you in the room when you're not there? And more specifically, who is talking about you in the room when you're not there? And I have a window into that conversation. I could share you story after story, but I'm going to give you one specific. I was working with a group of senior leaders and the CEO. And when I say senior leaders, let's be clear, this was the board. I'm just going to be more transparent. I'm with the board and the CEO of an organization. They are now planning the CEO's transition. And so as a part of this, the only two people in the room outside of board members was the CEO and the chief human resource officer. They call this person the chief people officer. So you had those two senior executive staff leaders and a couple members of the board. They were in the room having a conversation about succession planning. And I started to notice a pattern that the CEO knew every one of his direct reports. The CHRO knew every one of the direct reports. But the board members who were in the room, they knew some direct reports by name. They knew others by reputation. But there was a small group of executives that those board members were talking about, that they knew all about them. And it started to show a separation that of those 5 direct reports that were being talked about as a part of the succession plan for the CEO, only 2 names were being brought up repeatedly. There were 2 names that people could speak to, who they were, what they do, how they showed up, all of those other things. And ultimately, those 2 names were put forward as a part of the succession plan. So what am I saying to you? Those 5 people, they all were talented. They all had great reputations. They all were performers in the organization. They were accomplished and they over-delivered on what they needed. They were visible to everybody in the room. And here's the mistake that so many leaders make, that they think that just because they're visible because of their work, because of their talent, because of their accomplishments, that visibility is enough to get them to the next leadership level. It's not. See, it's not that these people were not good. It's not that they were not performing. It was not that they were, not qualified. They were absolutely qualified. All 5 of them were qualified. They had the resume, the credentials, the longevity, the knowledge and the insight of the organization. They had all of those things. They were visible to the senior leadership people who were making a decision. Few board members, chief people officer, and the CEO. But here's the mistake that so many leaders make. They think that visibility equals advocacy. Visibility does not equal advocacy. Now, what am I saying when I say visibility and advocacy? We sometimes had a mistake belief that if we show up as an executive and deliver the good, like if our work speaks for us, then we don't need to say anything. If our work speaks for us, we don't need to brag on our accomplishments. That's wrong. To some degree, you got to be a shameless self-promoter. But shameless self-promoter is not going to get you to the next big level by itself. What you need is an advocate. What you need is somebody who's in the room, who has a high level of influence and is willing to use their level of influence on your behalf. So I'm going to ask you right now, who can you name right now? Can you make a list of 3 people who would be likely in a senior level meeting that you're not in? And if the conversation went to who's good enough for the promotion, who's good enough to be put in the succession plan, that your name is being called, but more importantly, it's being called by the right person, and that person is saying the right things about you. Can you name them? That's a question for you. I don't have your answer. I know my answer, but do you have your answer? Who is saying your name in the meeting that you're not in? Who's in a conversation about something that is important for a next level of leadership, and they're saying your name? And can you tell me what they're saying about you? What is your reputation? And I will tell you that, again, if nobody is using their reputation and their position and their authority to talk about you in a room that you're not in, then your influence has been capped at a ceiling. That there is only so far you have gone in the organization. Why? Because you might think that being talented, being qualified, and over-delivering is enough to get you into that conversation. It's not. It's not. As a matter of fact, it's the reason why you can look across an organization and see that there's some people who are equally talented across the board, but they're still not getting promoted. They're still not being given that greatest leadership opportunity. They're still not being utilized to their full potential. What's the separator? Well, I'm glad you asked. And even if you didn't ask, I'm going to tell you anyway, because I want you to understand what happens at the elite levels of conversation, what people are paying attention to, what they're thinking about when they're evaluating people for senior level roles, for bigger roles, for CEO opportunities. It has very little to do with your talent, your accomplishments, and your ability to over-deliver. Those are prerequisites. You have to be talented. You have to be accomplished. You have to deliver the goods when the time is right, when people have expectations. You got to have a track record and a resume. But the resume is not good enough. There are 3 things that you need, and I'm going to walk you through all 3 of these on how you get them if you don't have them, how you build them if you don't have them, and what it takes to have your name brought up in a conversation that you're not in. Because that's really the most important place for your name to be brought up. Who's talking about you when you're not in the room? And what are they saying? Now, to give you these 3 things, I'm going to give you a couple of examples. And when I say a couple of examples, I'm just put it to you in the clear sense of the word. I have worked at a very high level in government. I've worked at a very high level in business and corporate America. I've worked at a very high level in the nonprofit sector. And I've even worked in government, in politics, when people get appointed to boards and commissions. And I know the names that ring out for certain board seats and certain commission seats and who gets appointed to what is said about them when they're not in the room. And again, it's not about how visible they are. It's not about their talent. It's not about their accomplishments. It's not about their KPIs, the things that they crush, their goals that they crush, their outcomes, their track record. Those things are prerequisites, but it's not about those. It's about much more than that. So let me give you the first example. I'm literally working with a board who is replacing a CEO. The CEO was retiring and leaving the organization, and they knew that they needed to go in a new direction. So they didn't necessarily want a full track record of people internal to the organization, but they wanted people external to the organization to be considered. They wanted to bring in an outsider to be able to leverage other outside industry expertise inside of their organization. And so when the conversation started about who were some potential candidates, they had brought in a search firm. The search firm had scoured the landscape of qualified, credible executives to put them before this group of board members who were a part of the search team. And I happened to be in that room. And here is what happened when the search firm started to put those candidates forward. There were members of the board who knew these people from other places. They had seen them operate in other circles. And so out of 20 names, about half of them were immediately X'd off the list because one board member says, yeah, I know her, but she ain't right for this position. They didn't say anything else beyond that. Her resume was great. All of those details were great, but I know her. She's not right for this position. Another person was, he's good, but he is an opportunist. So if we hired him, he would probably leave in 2 or 3 years, which means he wouldn't be right for what we needed the organization at present time. And I'm thinking to myself, one, for the first woman, how do you know that they're not good for this position? They haven't even interviewed. They haven't even opened their mouth and said a single thing about what they would bring to the table. And for that second person, the guy who they said, you know what, he's an opportunist. They said that because they knew some information about this person and what this person had said previously in other circumstances, what their ultimate goal was. And that this organization was not their ultimate goal. So they knew that this would be a stepping stone, that they were going to do something else. So again, the list got cut in half. It went from 20 people to 10 people inside of about 20 minutes. We had another 40 minutes in the meeting to figure out which of those 10 people would really be interested in this opportunity so we could actually get them to consider interviewing for the role. Let me tell you about a second circumstance. That if this organization absolutely had already hired a guy, and the conversation about this guy that they hired was that he ain't going to be here long. I don't know why the CEO pulled the trigger on him because he's not going to be here long. I already see that he hasn't moved his family here, number one. Number two, he's driving out of town every weekend. You know, he's not even making this place a part of his home. And nobody really knows him. Why we go all the way out there to get a person like this? I'm certain he's not going to be here. And you know what happened, y'all? They were absolutely right. That person left in 24 months, the moment they got a bigger opportunity somewhere else, really back home where they came from. So, no, I'm not mad at anybody for taking a bigger opportunity. But when you think about making a senior leadership decision, you want to know that there is a person who you actually have some level of trust with, that you absolutely really feel like that they're committed and that you can rely on them to do the job that you're hiring them to do long term. Because nobody wants someone who's just going to up and bump. You want someone who's going to come in, do what you expected, over deliver, create an environment that's more positive, and leave the place better than they found it. That's what you want. Now, the reason why I share those two stories, and I got others, and I'm going to close with one that relates to Barack Obama. So stay tuned for that because I'm not going to be long here, but I'm going to give you these 3 teaching points. And then I'm going to tell you about a conversation that someone was saying about other people when they're not in the room. Okay. So here are the 3 things that you need to have if you want to be the person that others are willing to advocate for you when you're not in the room. The first thing that you need is you actually need trust. Do people trust you? Do they trust your judgment? Do they trust how you see the world? Do they trust how you show up? Do they trust that you have an edict of ethics and morals and values and consistency? And see, that's really the key word. See, trust is not built in the big moments when you do something big. Trust is built on consistency. It's built on every day. Do people know that you're going to show up and rely, and can they rely on you every day? Do they see you in the quiet moments doing the right things all of the time? Do they see the small things? Because the small things add up to the big things. And so the small things are really how you deal with everyday circumstances. Like, do you run away from opportunity? Do you run away from authority? Do you make excuses? Do you pass the buck? Or do you have some habits and behaviors that will keep people from wanting to work with you? Let me give you an example of a habit and behavior that could keep people from wanting to work with you and trust you. I was having a conversation just 2 days ago about an executive that all of us knew. And the word that someone referred to this executive as was pickled. Pickled. You know, what do I mean by pickled? Just think about a pickle who is soaking in a jar of some liquid, and that liquid is absorbed into that. Why would you refer to a person as pickled? Well, let me give you the example of when I say example, the story that was told about this person and how it impacted their reputation. This person was known as a heavy drinker. Not necessarily at work. They didn't see him ever have a bottle or a glass or a shot of anything at work. But in the social settings, this person was evaluated significantly as a drinker. The person told me a story about how they got on a plane with this individual on a 6 a.m. flight. And when the flight attendant came to first class and said, "Can I offer you anything to drink?" It wasn't water or orange juice that this person wanted. This person wanted a Jack and Coke at 6 a.m. Then when the plane took off and they were in the air and the flight attendant came around again, this person got another Jack and Coke. And before that plane hit the ground, this person had 4 Jack and Cokes. Now you might be saying, hey, well, maybe they're nervous and they fly. And when they fly, okay, let me put it this way. If somebody's flying in first class, this ain't their first rodeo show. This ain't like this is their first time ever being on a plane. So they are an executive who flies for business, then they should be a little bit more comfortable. So 4 Jack and Cokes, I'm not making no excuse that they're nervous when they fly. If they are nervous when they fly, they need to go to a doctor and get a prescription to be able to calm them down. But 4 Jack and Cokes, that's a problem. But it didn't just stop with the 4 on the plane. When they got to the meeting where they were and they went to have dinner with some other executives, this person was throwing them back. So literally in a 12-hour day, this executive was observed having about 12 drinks, 12 alcoholic beverages. Now, maybe they got high tolerance and they can control their liquor and all those things and it don't affect their ability. But I'm telling you right now that if I'm looking for someone to be my CEO or to be my chief operating officer or to be my VP of, customer relations or whatever title the role is, and I hear a story that they threw back 12 drinks, I don't care how good their resume looks. I don't care how talented they are. That's somebody that I don't want representing me or representing my company. And so I know I would not use my reputation in a meeting to advocate for this person to get an opportunity. Now, I just used alcohol at that example, but maybe this is another person is a philanderer, which is they have a reputation that when they're out of town, they're a whole nother person chasing women or chasing men or whoever it is. But when they're at home or when they're in the business setting, they are a healthy executive who loves their spouse and partner. That reputation kind of precedes you. Those things say to people, we can't trust this person. We can't trust who they are. We can't trust that when the chips are down, when there's uncertainty in the air, when problems are coming, how they're going to respond. The last example of lacking trust is the person who literally, you feel like that they're putting on airs. They're pretending to be someone. They're always buttoned up. They say all the right words. They got every punchline and key catchphrase you can say in business to give people confidence about you. But in the quiet conversations, in the rooms that they're not in, people are saying, you know what? If things go south, I'm not certain we know what we're getting with him. I'm not certain what he's going to do. They're saying that they don't trust you. So nobody is going to advocate for you and push back on any bad narrative in the room because you're not living the expectations outside of the context of the day-to-day job that people say that you're trustworthy. Trust is essential. So again, who's talking about you in the room and what are they saying? Does that person trust you? Are they willing to use their credibility enough to convey that trust to the people inside of the room? Trust is the first thing. Reputation is everything. Trust is your reputation, and it is built every day. Here's the second thing that are being evaluated when you're in that room is your relationships. Yes, your relationships. See, we have so many people who come into the business world where they're what I call users and takers, which is they only build a relationship for what they can get out of the deal. Like I was just having this conversation with my wife the other day about someone who I barely knew, but as I got to know them, I thought they were an okay person. And we were just cordial and friends. And then out of the blue, all of a sudden, this person started to call me on a regular basis and say things like, I love you, bro. You don't love me. You don't even know me. And then after he said, I love you, he would say, yeah, man, I want to get to know you better. And I really want to build a bond and be strong with you and blah, blah, blah. So he was like hinting at all of these ways he wanted to connect with me more deeply. He wanted to connect with me more deeply. And it only took 3 conversations. And then the ask came. Hey, can you introduce me to this person? See, their whole goal was not to get to know me, was not to build a relationship with me. Their whole goal was to use me to get to someone that they really wanted to be connected to because they felt like that person could help them make more money, give them more opportunities, and help them to be successful. Not me. I just happened to have the relationship with the person that they wanted to be with. And so you're not going to be the person talked about positively in the room if you're a user and you build transactional relationships rather than trusting relationships, rather than deep relationships. So my question for you is, who have you built relationships with? Who relies on you and feels like you're a valuable commodity and partner that they really enjoy being in a relationship with you in the workplace, a business relationship, colleague relationship? Who sees you as a friend? Because I can tell you right now, when you build long-term, committed, trusting relationships with friends, your friends will show up in rooms and talk about you in ways that you never imagined to help you. I've been a recipient of that more times than I can count because I build long-term trusted relationships. Now, here's how you build those long-term trusted relationships. It's all about service. Service. Now, when I say service, I'm talking about, are you a servant leader who's committed to making people around you better? If you're not, you'll never build the trusted relationships that you need. The famous Earl Nightingale, one of the originators of the motivational speaking and leadership speaking profession, has a great quote that says, our rewards in life will be in exact proportion to our contribution and our service. So my question is, who are you serving? If you want the rewards of getting to the C-suite, if you want the rewards of being the leader that everybody loves, hires, and respects, then who are you building long-term relationships? Who are you serving? And if you're not serving, you're not being talked about in the room. You're not. Seriously, you're not. I'm telling you, you're not. So who are you serving? Who are you in deep relationship with? That's point number 2. Now here's my final point, and I'm going to close with my final story. And that is, in addition to being trusted and being strong in relationships, here's the question that people are going to ask. Who else have you created an opportunity for? I'm going to repeat that. If you want to be promoted, if you want to be that senior leader who gets the greatest opportunity to lead at the biggest level, people want to know, who's your legacy? Who can they point to behind you that you have helped to create opportunities? In other words, when you are in the room, who are you advocating for? Are you just talking about yourself, or are you advocating for others? Are you creating space and opportunity for other people? So I said this recently in an interview. I was interviewed for a Forbes story, a publication about me, actually, in my work. And I said, the best leaders are the ones that don't fight their way to the table for themselves. They fight their way to the table for other people. They create space and opportunity for other people. So the third thing you're going to be evaluated on is, who can we see in a track record as evidence of your leadership in creating opportunities for them? Do you have a successor for yourself? Because if you don't have a successor, you're saying to people you're not promotable. If you can't name 3 people who can do your job better than you, that could fill your role if you were to get promoted, if you can't name them, you're saying to people that person is not promotable, because we can't replace them. They haven't created opportunities for others. They haven't built others up. They haven't developed other people. That is the mistake that so many people make, because they don't believe that that conversation has happened. And I'm telling you right now, it's happening in the room. The people will speak about you if there's so many other people who are speaking about you. And the other people are not going to speak about you if you don't help anybody to get anywhere. You got to help people to get what they want, to go where they want to go, to achieve what they want to achieve. So who are you creating opportunities for? If you're not, you won't get promoted. So here's the bottom line. This conversation is about advocacy. Who is advocating for you, and what are they saying? Who's willing to put their reputation on the line in a meeting that you're not in a conversation you're not in, to say things about you, to talk about you? And do you know what's being said about you in the room? It won't be just about your talent, your visibility, your accomplishments, or your reputation of getting the work done. It will be because you have demonstrated that you are a person of trust. It will be because you have long-term relationships of people who can speak on your behalf, because they know that you are a servant first. And then thirdly, there will be evidence, a track record of junior people who have become senior people because you created opportunities for them. That is what it means to know what's being said about you in the room, and know who's talking about you in the room. Now, let me close with this last story. Some of y'all know that the Obama Presidential Center opened up this past week in Chicago. It's a grand affair to open the Presidential Museum and Center in Chicago, Illinois, for the 44th President of the United States. Well, just 2 days before that grand opening, President Obama was being interviewed by the Today Show's Craig Melvin. Craig Melvin is an anchor on the Today Show. Barack Obama is a former president of the United States. They were having an interview conversation about his history, about his legacy, and the impact of his presidency. And at the end of that interview, when the tape stopped rolling, Craig Melvin asked Barack Obama about me. And Barack Obama's response about me was how grateful he was for the work that I did in South Carolina, and that his presidency might not be possible if it wasn't for the work I was involved in with so many other people in South Carolina. And so here's the point. I was not in that room. Craig Melvin didn't have to raise my name. Barack Obama didn't have to answer the way he answered. But they both answered because I am a person that they both trust. I'm a person who built strong, significant relationships with them both. And number three, I am a person who helped both of them to get to that room in different ways. And so this is not really about me, but I want you to understand that being a trusted leader requires you to be a servant first. If you serve people first and not look for anything in return, but just help people to achieve the things that they want. Craig wanted to be on the Today Show one day. He wanted to be a national anchor. Barack Obama wanted to be president of the United States. And I made a decision to serve them both. And in my service in creating opportunities for other people, it is how I'm being talked about in a room that I'm not in. Now, if this is something that you're struggling with, if you don't know who's advocating for you, who's talking about you in the room, and you want some help, I would like for you to send me a direct message with the word advocacy. And I'm going to give you a tool that will help you to become the kind of executive that is being talked about in the room by the right people that can lead to your next bigger opportunity. This is a free resource, but you won't get it if you don't send me a direct message with the word advocacy. That's the key word. You put anything else in the chat, I'll respond to you, but I'm not giving you the free resource because this resource is only for people who want to achieve that next level and become the kind of leader that has a great impact on their team, their organization, and their culture. So I want to thank you for watching. Everybody have a fantastic day, and I will see you next time for Leadership Live with Anton.